What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at NerdTees, and welcome to Week 12, a Thursday edition, Week 12 of my weekly CFL football pick show for the 2021 CFL season, and it feels so good to be back. I had a winning week! Buddy, pal, winning week. God, did I ever miss you. 6-3 in week 11, which usually, like 2 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, 6-3, we did pretty well. But after the treading of water that I've been doing the last month, 6-3 feels so... It feels so crazy gratifying that maybe I might be at the end of that streak. So 6-3, went 3-0 straight up, picked all three of the games correct straight up, which is should be the cost of admission in this thing, and 2-1 against the spread. Fumbled the totals. What else is new? But that's not the main thing. The main thing is 6-3. Oh my God, we're back on the happy side of par. 22-20 straight up, so now 2 games above 500 there. My against the spread numbers, 19-23, 18-24 on the totals. Overall, 59-67. We're only 8 games underwater here. It's not going to take too much longer if I can string a couple of successful weeks together. Not going to be too much longer before we're talking about this overall season being over 50%. Oh my God, that's just going to feel incredible. CFL Fantasy in Week 11 would have been a lot worse had I not made a late change, and it was based on who was starting at running back for the Montreal Alouettes. I originally had William Stanback in my roster, however, of course, he was not going to play. Brought in Cameron Artis-Payne, and that money freed me up. I had the ability to then start the Montreal Alouettes defense, who actually wound up being my MVP for my Week 11 roster, but I did actually move up. Only 63.2 points in Week 11, so I certainly didn't blow the doors off the thing, but it was enough for me to move up. 848.3 points overall. And that Alouettes defense, again, the last thing that I added when I finally polished off that roster, they really came through. Only allowed 16 points last week, 10 quarterback sacks, count them, 10 quarterback sacks, 3 interceptions, forced a fumble, had 2 safeties in that game, all good for 23 points, better than a third of my overall total. So that was a clutch move there at the end. Getting the Alouettes defense in there definitely paid off. Let's hope I don't need the same kind of voodoo for my Week 12 lineup, and that lineup is right in front of your eyes right now. We are leaning on some Montreal Alouettes in this roster. Matt Shilt's going to get the start for me at quarterback, just a little over $8,400. Really, the only other option was Caleb Evans, and I think we've all ridden that train probably a little too much in fantasy. Going with Kadeem Carey and DJ Foster as my duo at running back, but I am also grabbing Brady Oliveira in my flex position, and that's because Andrew Harris hasn't practiced for the last 2 days. We're going to grab Jake Weineke there because you know what? If we're going to grab Schilt, let's grab his best option, his best weapon. That's Jake Weineke. Had enough money to hang around, grab Curly Gittens Jr., who has a expanding portion of that Toronto Argonauts passing offense, and I think Montreal and Toronto, you're going to see some fireworks between them this week. Not going to run with a defense. Originally, I wanted to grab Calgary because it felt like there was value there on the stamps. The money, I just couldn't make it work out, so we're riding no defense, which feels blasphemous after the Alouettes defense was my MVP last week, but that's how the lineup shakes out. I'm genuinely expecting big things. Here in Week 12, the Edmonton Elks are on the natural bye. We've got matchups of Toronto in Montreal to take on the Alouettes, Ottawa traveling to Hamilton to take on the Ticats. The Lions are in Winnipeg to take on the Blue Bombers, who have clinched themselves the first playoff spot in the CFL this year. And Saskatchewan is in Calgary taking on the Stamps, the third time these two teams have played each other in 4 weeks. And one thing I'm looking at here in Week 12, I like to call Week 12 Smash Week. That's what I'm calling it this week. I was really keeping my eye out for these real smash spots in these games. Spots where one team is not just better than the other team, significantly better than the other team, like 2/3 of the league better than the other team. So I was looking for smash spots. I feel like I identified quite a few interesting ones, which we will talk about as we get into the games. We are going to start in Montreal. Argos, Alouettes. This basically, right now, is the matchup for the lead in the East Division. Argos sit atop the East Division right now at 6-3, winners of 3 straight games, and coming off of their bye, so they will certainly be well rested. They're facing some injuries, but they will be relatively well rested. They played twice back in week 10. It was 2 wins, the win over Ottawa and the win at Hamilton. That last second field goal by Boris Beattie wins that game, but they won those 2 games by a combined score of 59-39 because they blew out the REDBLACKS. Again, they dominated Ottawa by 3 possessions. I would say they survived the Ticats, but look, a win is a win is a win, especially this time of year. After those 2 performances last week, if McLeod Bethel-Thompson is not the firm, solid QB1 on this team now, he never will be. He combined to complete 44 of his 63 pass attempts, 569 passing yards, threw 4 touchdowns. He did throw 2 picks, but look, he led them to a dominant win in the early part of that week and then led them on the drive that allowed them to win the game against Hamilton. If he's not the QB1, he's thrown as many touchdowns in week 10 as Nick Arbuckle has thrown all season. Arbuckle's got 5. He's got more interceptions than touchdowns. McLeod threw 4 just in week 10. So he's got to be the QB1 at this point. 4 different receivers in the Ottawa game with at least 4 catches, and 6 that had at least 4 different targets. You got Curly Gittens Jr., who I mentioned in my fantasy roster this week, and Worthy as well, emerging as viable threats in that Argos offense. They genuinely have 5 different dangerous receivers that they could throw the ball to. Who do you cover? The Alouettes entered this game also on a 3-game winning streak. They've brought their record all the way up to 5-4 on the season. Their last outing was a win in Ottawa last week, 27-16. And look, they've played Ottawa in back-to-back games. No better time of the year to get to play Ottawa in back-to-back games. Momentum is absolutely paramount. Both of these teams currently have it, which is lucky for Montreal. And this identifies our first couple of smash spots, smash spot alert, if you will, in this game. The Alouettes are the number 1 total offense in the CFL to this point in the season. The Argos are only the number 7 total defense. The Argos have gotten by on being able to outscore opponents. It's going to be difficult to do that this week against the team that is generating the most yardage in the CFL. Not only that, Montreal's been getting a ton of that done on the ground. William Stanback, Cameron Artis-Payne when he's gotten the opportunity, and from the quarterback position as well. And Matthew Schultz, we saw last week, can make some plays with his feet. The number 1 rush offense in the CFL, taking on the number 7 rush defense by the Argos. Alouettes making an interesting roster move, probably the interesting roster move of last week, which is trading defensive end Antonio Simmons, 25-year-old guy. I think he probably had a future on this defensive line. They trade him to Edmonton for Trevor Harris. 1-for-1 deal, no picks involved. Trevor Harris is now a Montreal Alouette. I think you got to look at this like down the road. The starting quarterback for this team might be TBD. As of right now, this is a depth move. This is because of the Vernon Adams injury. I don't know that they had another healthy quarterback on the roster. So trade, bring in Trevor Harris, a great depth piece who you could argue could very easily be the starting quarterback for this team in a playoff game. So I think it was a savvy move by Montreal. I questioned it a little bit at first, but the more I think about it, the more I like it. There's obviously a lot of question marks surrounding the Montreal Alouettes right now. Are they really as good as this 3-game winning streak has shown? They got to play Ottawa twice after all. But Toronto, one thing I'm not questioning is the fact that Toronto has struggled on the road this year. Their record is not terrible. I think it's like 2-3 or 1-2, something like that. Like it's only a game under 500. But on average, they're getting outscored on the road by a touchdown, 25-18. They have been really good at home this year. I think they're unbeaten at home. I think they might be 4-0. But they've struggled on the road this year. I have a lot of question marks around the Argos when they're not playing in their own building. And that's kind of the way I'm going to lean in this game. It's a very marginal upset. I'm going to take the Alouettes here at home to upset the Argos. This is a game that is a struggle sort of situationally for both. Montreal, I find, plays better on the road than they do at home. So I think both teams would almost prefer to be in the opposite positions to where they are. But I'm going to lean on the home dog here. I'm going to take the Alouettes. Obviously, since I like Montreal to win, I'm going to take Montreal with the single point against the spread that they are taking as the home dog in the outright win. Total in the game set at 48.5 points. This is very, very close. I'm going to stick under on it, but it's only marginal. The Als are only 3-6 to the over this year. They have not hit an over at home yet this year, and the defense is only allowing 17 points a game over the last 3. So their defense is humming a little bit. They've got some confidence. I'm going to stick under in this game, Montreal and Toronto. We're going to go Alouettes 24, Argos 23, just a single point win for Montreal. Maybe Montreal does to Toronto what Toronto did last week. Let's go to Hamilton now. Ticats are going to play host to the Ottawa REDBLACKS, who, after showing some promise in the Caleb Evans debut game, they've lost 3 straight. They're down to 2-8. This is firmly a team that is looking towards next year, and multiple people have said that. A loss against Montreal in Ottawa by 2 possessions, 27-16 last week. The wheels have fallen off. They sandwiched that close game, that second game in week 10 against Montreal. I think it was 20-16. So that was a tight game. They almost won that thing, but they sandwiched that in the middle of 2 absolute blowouts, and you just can't trust them right now. And it starts at the quarterback position. I don't like saying this because I'm a huge Caleb Evans fan. Evans' last 3 games have not been good enough. He's had 753 total yards, which is not terrible. 149 of them have come on the ground. I like that. He's making plays with his feet. But he's only got a single touchdown. It was a passing touchdown. He has not scored on the ground yet this year, and he's thrown 7 interceptions in those 3 games. It's just not good enough. And the one way you can for sure tell that Ottawa is starting to prepare for next year is they're back to playing some positional roulette. Because now we're looking at, is Caleb Evans going to be the starter once Taron Christensen is healthy again? You got Duck Hodges in their quarterback room as well. So now you got to start questioning who the starting quarterback is going to be. You healthy scratched Timothy Flanders for DeLance Turner at the top running back spot. Is that going to continue, or going to we see somebody completely different at starting running back? So once you really start hitting that positional roulette, which is really what I feel Ottawa's at this point, you can't go with them. Going to be very quick here with Hamilton because I imagine you probably already know the way I'm going with this game. Ticats at 4-5, losers of 2 straight games. They are coming in off their bye, so they will be well rested. They lost that game against Toronto last week. That game was in Hamilton by a single point back in week 10. It was concerning of them to blow a late lead. They gave up, I think they were outscored by 9 points in the 4th quarter, which led to that loss. I may have been a little bit too bullish on the Ticats when I was talking about oh boy, they're getting healthy, you watch out for the Ticats. I might have been a little too bullish on them. But look, smash spot alert here. The number 2 scoring defense in the CFL are the Hamilton Ticats. They are not giving up a lot of points. This is the number 9 scoring offense for Ottawa. Also the number 2 opponent pass efficiency. Ottawa obviously has struggled at the quarterback position all season long outside of several bright spots, but this is the second most difficult secondary to move the ball on. So I really don't see what Caleb Evans is going to do in this game. Maybe I'm wrong. They're still a plus team over their last 3 despite those back-to-back losses, and they did beat this team by 3 possessions in Ottawa just last month. So obviously, I'm on the Ticats. This has to be a get-right game for Hamilton. If they have any playoff aspirations whatsoever, not just to get there, but to actually do something in them, this has to be a get-right game for them. I think it will be. What little optimism I had in Ottawa obviously is gone. Now, Hamilton's favored by 14.5 points in this game, and Hamilton is just not that team to me right now. I've got to play it safe and take the 14.5 on Ottawa, even though Ottawa is certainly not that team either, and Ottawa is very bad. But if I'm going to lay 14.5 points, I've got to lay it on a team that I genuinely know is a very good football team. I think Hamilton's a good football team. I don't necessarily know in my heart and soul that they're a very good football team. So I just can't lay that many points on them. I'm going to hold my nose a little bit and take the 14.5 on the Red Blacks. Total in the game set at 41.5 points. This is kind of a play on the number because these two teams are only combined to have hit 6 of 19 overs this year, but that's such a low number. I'm going to go over on it. If you would have made all 19 of those games between these two teams have played respectively, if you would have made their totals all 41.5 points, these two teams would be 8-11 to the over. So they're 6-13 now. They would have gotten a little bit better on this total. The total's just plain too low for me. So we're going to go over 41.5 points in Hamilton, Ottawa. Let's go Ticats 27, Red Blacks 17. Ticats win comfortably, but don't cover the spread. And I'll take this opportunity in the show, as I always do, to shout out my great friends and sponsors at NerdTees. NerdTees.ca is where you need to go to find dozens and dozens of incredible tea blends and accessories, great gift ideas with the holidays fast approaching. And today's blend is Strawberry Power Up, an old classic, an old favorite of mine. Give you that extra little boost of energy to get through your CFL pick show. Can you guys not relate to that? All right. Well, to get you through whatever you need to get through, get yourself a little Strawberry Power Up. And like I teased on the NFL show this week, there's some really fun stuff coming down the pipe with NerdTees that I can't wait to talk to you about. And once I get some more information, you folks will be the first to know. Use my promo code BWFinest on nerdtees.ca. That's going to save you 15% at checkout. You're going to get free shipping in Canada on any order over $100. You're also going to get a great conversion rate on the US dollar if you're one of my CFL viewers from the United States, which thank you for supporting the league and supporting me, of course. nerdtees.ca, promo code BWFinest, save you 15%, get your free shipping, get your conversion rate, find yourself something to love, or find someone you love something to love. You can do it on nerdtees.ca. Let's go to Winnipeg now, where the 9-1 Blue Bombers are going to play host to a BC Lions team that has lost 3 straight games. They're at 4-5 on the season. Wheels kind of falling off. Chance they might make the playoffs, but boy, they're looking at a crossover spot here more than likely, and the crossover spot's going to be a dogfight for them. Their last game was a loss against Calgary. That game was in BC, and not only did they lose to Calgary, they got stomped by Calgary 39-10. The offense scored for Calgary, the defense scored for Calgary, and BC is in the midst of a crazy offensive power outage. They're only averaging 14 points a game over their last 3. Nathan Rourke entered this game in the late stages in the fourth quarter, stepping in for Mike Riley. Mike Riley has been invisible without Lucky Whitehead. Man, lest anyone question how important Lucky Whitehead is to that offense, since he's been out, Riley's had probably his 2 worst games of the season, if not of the last couple of seasons. He attempted 17 passes, did Nathan Rourke, and you know the game was going poorly if Nathan Rourke attempted 17 passes. That's no shot at Nathan Rourke either. He's just not Mike Riley. Now, I've talked a lot about the BC Lions and their abject refusal to run the football. And when I first saw that they had cut Shaq Cooper, I was like, okay, that's them saying we're not going to run the ball and you can't make us. Now, they did actually run the ball a little bit in this game. They had 12 carries for 70 yards and a rushing touchdown. So they did actually run the ball a little bit. Now, including their game back in week 8, since that game, the Lions' run game has only been 26 carries for $108 and 2 rushing touchdowns. But the more I think about it, the more I think the cutting of Shaq Cooper is more so the coronation of James Butler. I think James Butler is going to be this team's top running back moving forward. Whether or not he's a guy, I don't know. But I kind of get some William Stanback vibes off of him a little bit. Maybe that's just me. I don't think he's going to be that good at any point this season, but moving forward over the next year or 2, keep an eye on James Butler because I think he could be an underrated sneaky play. The Bombers 9-1, winners of 7 consecutive games. They beat Edmonton in Edmonton by double digits last week, 26-16. They did not cover the spread. I kind of felt like they would, but didn't work out. A double-digit win despite the fact that their 30-point streak ended. Remember, they had 5 straight games where they scored 30 points, and they had several uncharacteristic defensive breakdowns in that game. Now, had they been playing a better quarterback, and a better offense, they may have been more pronounced and they would have stood out a lot more and may have had a greater impact on the game. But there were just certain plays where I'm watching and I'm just like, that doesn't look like the Blue Bombers defense. Like, what in the world was that? There was just a couple of those, and maybe they were just mental hiccups. Those things happen, especially in the long grind of a season, but could be something to keep an eye on. Now, obviously, when you have a team like Winnipeg playing anybody, basically, but especially a team like BC, whose season has kind of gone off the rails a little bit, there's going to be a lot of smash spot alerts in this game. There are at least 5 of them, probably closer to a half dozen, but let me reel off a couple here for you. Winnipeg's got the number 1 total defense in the league. BC's only number 7 in terms of total offense. Winnipeg has the number 3 rush defense, total rush defense in the CFL. BC, obviously the worst running team in the league. The Bombers have the number 2 total offense. BC, shockingly, has the worst total defense in the CFL. Worse than Ottawa. I was surprised too, but it is what it is. Bombers made some transactions over the weekend as well. They're officially all in as if they weren't at that point, being 9-1 on the year. But they traded for Sergio Castillo, sent a conditional 4th, I believe, for Sergio Castillo to shore up the kicking game. They brought in Winston Rose, who has been an all-star defensive back in this league in the past. They brought in Shaq Cooper. Interestingly enough, we just talked about the cutting of Shaq Cooper. They bring in Shaq Cooper for depth in the running back room. This is what it takes. Like, it takes those kind of depth moves to make you not impervious to injuries, but better able to manage them. Depth is the name of the game when you know you're gunning for a championship. That's exactly what Winnipeg is doing. Obviously, I'm on the Bombers in this game. They're not unbeatable. We saw shades of it last week. We saw those moments that it was just like, okay, like, kind of, what are you doing here? Like, this doesn't look like you're trying to, win this game. You don't look like the Bombers. The moments are few and far between. They're not going to lose to the Lions here. I'm sorry, they're just not. On the line here, the Bombers are laying 11.5 points as a home favorite. Now, this is the kind of team that I'm going to lay this many points on. I am going to lay the 11.5 on Winnipeg. They're 4-1 against the spread at home, so they've been getting the job done, winning straight up and covering their spreads. Some of them have been large. And the last 5 games, they're against the spread cover has averaged plus 17 to the line. So over their last 5 games, they've not only won the games, they've on average beaten the line by like a lot of points, by 17 points. I feel confident in their ability to cover this 11.5. Total here is 42 points, and unlike when I just talked about the previous game where the number was only 41.5, this is not a play on this number. I have to stick under on this, and it's gross, but the Bombers are the Bombers, and that defense is that defense. Interestingly enough, the Bombers only a couple times this year have the Bombers given up double-digit points, but every time they have, after the next 2 games, have been under 10 points allowed. So I don't necessarily know that that's going to happen, but I know that the defense is going to play well enough, and I know that I have enough question marks about a Lions offense that doesn't have Lucky Whitehead in it yet, that this number is going to stay under. So we're going to stay under 42 points. I'm going to go Winnipeg 27, BC 14. Winnipeg also covers the number against the spread. And the last game we're going to look at sees the Saskatchewan Roughriders in Calgary taking on the Stamps. Saski at 5-4, losers of 2 straight games now, but coming in off of their bye week. Their last game back in week 10, they lost to these Stampeders. That game was in Mosaic Stadium in Saskatchewan, lost by a field goal 22-19. Saski has dropped back-to-back games to this Calgary team and has red flags popping up, I would say, all over the place. And I have a really interesting perspective on Saskatchewan that I'm going to share with you in a little bit. I don't know how many people are going to agree with it, but we shall see. For Saskatchewan's part, there's a couple of smash spot alerts that go in their favor in this game. This is the number 1 offensive turnover team this year. They've only had, I think, 1 offensive turnover all season long, and the Stamps are only the number 8 team in terms of defensive takeaways. They have the second fewest defensive takeaways in the CFL so far this year. And the Riders, the number 1 run defense in the CFL, taking on the number 8 rush offense with Kadeem Carey. You may have noticed I do have Kadeem Carey in my fantasy roster this week. That's probably a volume play. It's certainly not a play on the matchup. There's no surprise here about what makes the Saskatchewan Roughriders tick. Very solid quarterback play from a very solid quarterback, dynamic offensive playmakers, and a dominant pass rush. That's what makes the Riders tick. Their special teams are good as well, but that's really what makes the Riders tick, is those 3 things specifically. But since their 3-0 start, remember, this was the last unbeaten team in the CFL. Since their 3-0 start, they haven't really put those things together all that much. They're 2-4 since they started the season 3-0. For the Stamps, they are on fire, winners of 3 straight games, evening their record at 5-5, looking a lot more like the Stamps lately. They won that dominant game in BC, 39-10 that we talked about. Quarterback protection in this game is going to be of the utmost importance. They did not allow a sack last week against BC. They've only allowed 6 total sacks during this 3-game win streak. Now, what that means is the Riders have sacked Bo Levi Mitchell 6 times in the last 2 games they've played each other. So I'm going to play a little game here. I'm going to set the sack total at 3.5. If Calgary can keep Saskatchewan to 3 sacks or fewer, I think Calgary is in position to win the game. So there you go. I'm setting the over-under at 3.5. Hey, let me know in the comment section below how you think that's going to turn out. You on the over? You on the under? Special shout out to wide receiver Luther Hakunavanhu, born, I believe, in Zimbabwe, but has lived in Canada for quite some time. I believe went to university at York, a national wide receiver, getting his first CFL touchdown. 3 catches in that game, including, again, his first CFL touchdown. It's a huge moment. And shout out, too, to Rene Paredes, man. 6 for 6 on his field goals in that game last week. He is on pace for his most points scored since 2017. What happened in 2017? The Stamps went to the Grey Cup. I think more than any other game maybe that we've seen all season, this game is really going to determine who is a contender in the West Division and who the pretender is. And here's where my unpopular opinion on the Riders is going to come up. So first of all, I'm taking Calgary in this game. The Saskatchewan Roughriders are the BC Lions 2.0. They're a better team than BC, but they have the exact same seasonal layout as BC. They have been dominant against the East Division. They feasted on the East. They're 3-0, outscoring East Division opponents by an average of 28-11. They've pounded the East Division. The West Division, they're 2-4, and they're being outscored by 6 points. Their offense goes from 28 points a game to 20 points a game. The defense goes from 11 points a game allowed to 26 points a game allowed. The only West Division team that Saskatchewan has beaten this year is BC. They've beaten them twice. I hate to say it because I know I'm going to have a lot of Riders fans in my mentions, probably on Twitter and on this video and whatever. I know a lot of Riders fans watch these videos. The Riders are pretenders. Right now, this game is a pick'em on covers. On a lot of books, it's as much as Calgary laying 2.5 points as the home favorite. I got the game as a pick'em. I like Calgary as a pick'em. Again, I'm happy to get it as a pick'em, but I'd be fine laying as many as the 2.5 points on Calgary as well. But I'm taking it as a pick'em. Let's take Calgary. Total in the game set at 44. This one's pretty darn close, but the last 2 head-to-head matchups have been 40 points and 41 points. The 2 teams have also only combined to hit 7 of 19 overs this year. I think I'm going to lean under on this one by just a little margin. I'm going to take Calgary 23, Saskatchewan 20. Stamps get it done. There you have it, folks. Those are my picks for Week 12 in the CFL. Let me go over them here with you one more time. I've got Montreal at home upsetting the Toronto Argos 24-23. So I like Montreal +1 against the spread in a game that stays under 48.5 points. I've got Hamilton beating Ottawa in Hamilton by a score of 27-17. I'm taking the points on the Red Blacks +14.5 in a game that goes over 41.5 points. I got Winnipeg with a big win at home against the BC Lions, 27-14. I'm taking Winnipeg minus the 11.5 points in a game that stays under 42. And I've got the Calgary Stampeders at home picking up the win over the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I got Calgary in that game as a pick'em, under 44 points, 23-20 for the Stamps. The Week 12 episode is in the books, folks. Again, what do you think on that sack prop in Calgary, Saskatchewan? Over or under 3.5 sacks for the Riders in that game? What do you think about my take on the Riders? If you disagree with it, great. I'm open to healthy discussion. It's just when I discovered that information, when I finally clued into that information, I was like, oh my God, they're kind of just like BC in that sense. Let's have a conversation about it. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at Nerd Tees. Your boy's going to go get his hair cut now, so enjoy the games in Week 12. They begin tomorrow. We'll see you again for, lucky, hopefully, week number 13. Back-to-back weeks. Think it. Back-to-back winning weeks. This is what we need. Back-to-back winning weeks.